is towards the edge. There's a tension ever growing in the air. A child drags the blanket through the mud. She hides her eyes from the gleam of the sun, but we say, as below, so above, it shall be. The so-called trickle down the piss of royalty. A world of stone and rock, the pain within our feet. Over the empty seas, to most certainly his grave. In his wallet, a wrinkled photograph of family's embrace. By decree of the crown, to war for naught but vain, they send the desperate poor to die, but we say, as above, so below, it will be. The tower of reflective glass, the view below their feet. We see ourselves while looking in, but inside can't be seen. The old proverb speaks true. Something about homes of glass and throwy stones. Well, the rocks have been just streaming down from the top of the palace walls. Wouldn't it be just a shame if we returned him home? As above and below, we will be. How soon we see you back around, broken on your knees. The pinnacle of wealth abound, now a pile of debris.
Good evening, my brothers and sisters. Yes, it is I, the old wolf. Time for another episode of Dancing with Wolves tonight, as picked out by my sister Diana. Diana, episode 70, almost 50, still kicking ass. She is the assassin queen. She's our sister, fellow human. And she and I are gonna we're gonna stir it up tonight. If I know my sister, she's gonna bring some of her comedic edge to it. Shy and some others were joking earlier. I guess I'm going to be playing the part, not unlike Life of Brian. I'm not really Christ, but I'm going to hang on the cross for all my fellow men out there to absolve the sins of all the fuck boys out there. So yes, Shia says, I get to hang out and be uncomfortable tonight. No, again, all joking aside, my sister Diana, she's really incredible writer, really has a good perspective on some of the things going on around us. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. I want to shout out my brother Sid Ryder, Inner Demon Media, Inner Demon Radio. He's a good man. He's a good demon. And he's been doing a lot out here in the community to build bridges, to bring people together. As always, with my show, the views, thoughts, expressions, opinions, etc., expressed are pretty much mine and mine alone, unless it's Diana's, and you can blame fucking her. And, you know, if you want to accept it, you can. Take what you need, leave the rest behind. But again, a lot of us do share these opinions. And again, you don't have to agree, but maybe you'll get a little bit of insight. Now, speaking of Inner Demon Media, my brother Sid and Papa Olafson has a show tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Talking with Heathens. Really good show. They get into some really deep stuff, and they too have a good understanding of what's going on around them without trying to shove it down your throat. So check them out tomorrow night. Part of the Inner Demon crew. Speaking of Papa Olafson, Falbateer.com. Brother man makes some incredible, powerful stuff. Drums, rattles, runes, necklaces. My son, we shared out the other day. Finally got him to pose for a fucking picture. But we tagged him out. It's a beautiful necklace. Nice piece of elk. When we were out and about Sunday, all kinds of people were like, ooh, where can I get one of those? So, yeah, you can get it at falbateer.com. And for those of you at home who are listening and can't see on the screen, that's www.fjallvaetir.com. Yes, brother Sid Man's got the horns. Listen, again, I talk about this repetitively. I'm going to continue to talk about it repetitively. The people in our circles that we share and we talk about have real fucking magic. Okay, Papa not only has the magic, but he has the insight and the character that he actually gives a shit about what he does. You know what I mean? And that's rare in this world these days when everybody's driven by other things. So check him out. Also, too, a couple days ago, we had the pleasure of hanging out with my sister Ashley Hart and her man Larry. We actually jumped the border over into Canada to go see them. She's another powerful creator. Dream Catchers with Intention. Hearts Creation, and that's HARTS Creations. You can find her on Facebook.com/hearts. Again, that's HARTS-creations. Now, she's still out dancing about, so don't expect a response right away, but she'll be back in about a week or so. But let me tell you, we have a bunch of her stuff. She did a commission project for an autism-themed dream catcher for last year's Arts for Autism. Really powerful stuff. Can't say enough about her. Go check her out. And I want to mention my brother, Tattoo Tony Rodriguez, who is on that opening track, The View Below. He's incredible, incredible brother. He has a band, Broken Past. You can check him out at brokenpastnewjersey.com. He's also the lead artist, owner of the Under My Skin for Life Foundation and the Under My Skin Tattoo Shop in the Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. And if you can't get down to the Jersey Shore to see him, check him out at papostickercompany.com. He can literally take anything you can imagine and create it into anything you can imagine. Guitar straps, t-shirts, guitar picks, you name it, he can do it. So check him out. These are the people in our neighborhood. Now, again, in a few minutes, we're going to have Diana come out with us and start the dance. But I also wanted to shout out my lovely witch, Shia. She has a seance. Let me say that again. Seance Thursday night, 8 p.m. It's going to get fucking weird. Oh, yeah, it's going to get weird. But she doesn't do this often. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, yeah, it will definitely be an interesting evening. It's a limited seat event. She'll probably do more later in the year, but if you'd like to learn more, ladyshia.com/seance. It's Thursday night, June 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be hosted on Zoom, so it'll be a private thing. It will not be publicly put out there. But if you want to learn more, reach out to the witch. Talk to her. Tell her the wolf sent you. Now, I mentioned earlier about the Assassin Queen, and a lot of our friends, our brothers and sisters, we all have, pet names, nicknames. I'm the Old Wolf. My brother Chris Senager is Fat Ass. Okay. Diana is the Assassin Queen. And this was the little thing that she sent me. And this particular character is from an anime called Demon Slayer. And let me tell you, if you run into this chick in the woods, that's your ass. Okay? No joke. All right. And anime has been something that I've shared with my son, and, Shia shares with us as well, too, for a number of years, because art imitates life, and life, conversely, imitates art. And the stories and the themes really are reflective of the same things that go on in our lives. How we dance with our demons, no coincidence. A little Saturday morning show that I do on Inner Demon Radio at 11 a.m. But our experiences, our stories reflect these different things. And the emotional context, as I like to say, is universal. Pain is universal. Pleasure is universal. Granted, there are many flavors in between, but we're really more alike than we are not. Now, again, we can agree to disagree on certain things, but I'm pretty sure everybody can agree that, if you meet this chick in the dark woods, like I said, it's probably not going to go well for you, especially as you can see that little animation for those of you watching. That sword is no fucking joke. Okay, no joke at all. So yes, now the last time Diana was on, we had a different image. And this was done by a friend of hers, and I'll let her tell the story about that again. But these are some of the Assassin Queen's masks, we'll call them. Shades of Diana. Okay, and again, I submit to you that any one of them, if you run into them in the shadows of the woods, yeah, that's your ass. Okay. Now, I don't want to create this specter and have everybody think, oh my God, she's a fucking demon. Well, she might have demon tendencies, but she's actually an incredibly beautiful, powerful, compassionate woman. Okay. So, all joking aside, and she'll explain it to certain degrees in her own words, because she's very open about it. And it's one of the things I love about her. And it's one of the things that I think is important, that we discuss being comfortable with who we are, even some of those darker edges, because in the end, it does reflect who we are. It doesn't have to define us. But I'm sure we've all been in situations where, sometimes you can't play nice, and it doesn't mean that's our motive. It doesn't mean that we want to be bad people, though I suppose some of us sometimes do. But ultimately, it's about context. So you can look at any given situation, and when you remove people and put different people in it, the narrative becomes completely different. So to start off a little bit with some of the music and the bands that I really like, I want to give a shout out to Josh and Raven over there with Bonded by Darkness. Okay, because they have an album release show coming up in a couple days. Specifically, well, it's a little over a week. I'm not real good with time. Good evening, Artemis, Jess, and everybody else joining us. But yes, June 17th at the Sly Fox Lounge, North Olmsted, Ohio. Bonded by Darkness is going to do their album release party with Storms Within, Burn the Living, and Ramjet. This is Inner Demon Media, Dirtbag Clothing, show. These guys are really fucking good. I'm honored again to have one of the tracks from that album that we're going to play in a couple of minutes when we cut out and then get Diana on here live. They're incredibly supportive, again, also of the community. They're not only part of the Inner Demon Media family, but they engage with a lot of different bands from the area. And obviously, they're not from Rochester, New York, but they're right over the border over in Ohio. And there's a lot of good music coming out of Ohio. Okay. And another Ohio band I will be featuring one of their new tracks, a band called Frail. Yes, Witch Doom. But this is what it's about, supporting each other, encouraging each other. When one of us finds success, we all find success indirectly. There's no room to fucking hate, okay? And I'll throw this out here. If all you got is hate and contempt and resentment, and you're just trying to chase somebody else's fucking shadow because you have no definition yourself, you know what? Fucking get some fucking help, okay? And again, I will submit, there's help out there. You just gotta be honest, okay? If you come fronting with the bullshit, guess what? Pretty much everybody in this fucking community is an empath, which translated means they can read through your bullshit. Okay, so if all you have is bullshit, don't even bother. Okay, because people are going to see it for what it is. The truth always comes out. I don't care how good a fucking liar you are, how good of an illusionist, a scammer. You know what? You may have a couple of moments, but the truth will get you every time. I see my sister Mary Beth in the audience, another of the Inner Demon Media crew. She is, by default, the meme queen, because she has a power with memes. Ooh, let me tell you, every morning I go to look for those fucking memes because they make me laugh. And sometimes they make me think. They're like, I didn't know that. So it's good. So yeah, check out Bonded by Darkness. Again, June 17th, the Sly Fox Lounge, North Olmsted, Ohio. You can check them out on Facebook, YouTube as well. Give them a like, give them a share. And listen, if you have something you want to submit, if you want to come on the show like Diana, like a whole lot of others, just send me an email. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. If you can't see it at home, wolf@oldwolfmusic.com. So we're going to start it off again. No, I didn't. The Queen of Mean. No, you're not the queen. Well, listen, I'm sure you could be the Queen of Mean. Okay. I've seen a couple of moments where somebody has kind of played the fool in front of you or, done one of them stupid things. And yeah, I definitely think there's an edge to you that, if left unchecked, could fuck somebody up. But I don't think for a second that your core nature is demonic. And I say that trembling, by the way, easily. Tasty. So yes, I'm going to get Diane on the line. But again, this track, The Devil in You, really cool song. Again, part of my playlist now. And it's pretty funny, in some ways. And this, I mean this in all sincerity, that the more that I listen to these guys, the more that I really respect what they're doing. Getting to know Josh, the guitar player, he refuses to be fucking defined by any one thing. He'll play over here, he'll play over there. He's like, what inspires me. He makes his guitar fucking sing. And he shares a dynamic that I do, that he makes music with the people he loves, his girl Raven and his son. Okay? No coincidence. I do music with my son, the monkey, and Shia. So when you can find those common elements, let me tell you, it's fucking beautiful. So I can't say enough about these guys. So again, I'm going to play their track, Devil in You. I'm going to get Diana on the line, and we will let the fuckery commence. Hashtag unfuck the fuckery. Yes, indeed. And remember, there's always a little bit of devil in you. So, yes, that was The Devil in You, a little bit of Bonded by Darkness. Powerful track. Again, really honored to call them friends. I see my sister Jessica is in the house. So, yes, one of the things that will be upcoming during the summer is we're actually going to auction Jessica off. Yes, she has graciously agreed to basically be the human catalyst in some type of thing that'll be a worthy cause, I'm sure. So, yes, it's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yes, yes. I see Shia. Smash those heats. I'm thinking smash those hearts, hearts, hearts. As in Hearts Creation? I don't know. But I have my sister Diana online. And again, tonight's episode, Almost 50, Still Kicking Ass, was her suggestion when I had talked to her. It's like, hey, listen, come back on the show. I want you to, kind of talk about some of the things. Diana has a natural humor, and she also has a unique perspective as a human, as she likes to say. So rather than put words in her mouth, because she really can say it all anyway, Diana, a.k.a. the Assassin Queen. So yes, you're alive now.
And greetings, humans.
Yeah.
And good evening. Excellent.
So yeah, you're free to run now.
I'm free to run now. It's funny because I have plenty. There are ideas that I mull through clearly, and one of the things that I mull through. There's many topics that I want to talk about, obviously, but why I chose the title, only because of a lot of things that have happened in my life, from childhood and then growing up as an adult, then getting married, having a special needs child, having cancer the first time, no chemo, then my husband dying, and then grappling with widowhood, and then hitting the wall again with cancer number 2. This time, there goes my kidney. And now I really don't give a shit about anything. And now that I'm almost 50, I've got menopause going on, and now I absolutely don't give a shit about anything.
So you've been dancing with a lot of fucking demons, as they say.
Pretty much. But what's interesting about dancing with your demons is that the reason they dance with you is to see whether you dance back and how you dance back. And it's interesting when you notice how you change and how you move and navigate through things in spite of all of the bad that you perceive that you have gone through. And everybody else out there will then say, I don't know how you do it. I don't know. I just kind of keep going.
It's hard to explain because it's an organic thing to some degree, because everybody's experience, their perception on it is a little bit different. But ultimately, and I know it's one of the things you and I have talked about, you really don't get a whole lot of options. If you don't dance with them, they fuck you. Literally, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's the lesser of the two evils. And it's kind of like, well, why should I allow this to cause me more grief, more pain, more negativity, when ultimately, and Shia teaches this, and it's one of the things a lot of us have in common. Real magic is based on manifestation. So that manifestation has to start with us, literally within our experiences and our perceptions.
Absolutely. But it also teaches us to evolve, right? Because part of adulting and part of growing up and part of getting older is the ability to evolve.
Well, I don't know about you. I identify as 12 years old, and I'm going to identify for 12 years old for at least the next 2,000 years, because that's the kind of fucking vampire I am.
No, and I agree with that as well. There's lots of positives to looking at age as just a number and only feeling how you feel and perceiving your life and doing things as if you were still young, and one should always still be young at heart. in my opinion. But what I also like is the wisdom that you take from your experiences, and also learning from other people's experiences as well. I think after the death of my husband is pretty much when I broke the barriers, or rather, I was smashed through the barriers that I thought were there as far as who I had to become. It wasn't a choice for me.
No, because the options were taken away from you. You were 1 minute a family, and then the next minute a single mother with a special needs child.
Yeah, absolutely. But in spite of this, I feel empowered. I feel very empowered in my voice. I didn't realize that I could write as well as I did. All I had to do was explain it. And most of the work I've ever published have only ever taken me maybe 5 minutes to put together. And then I'd leave it alone. And then I'd look at it again.
Well, as Shai would say, I mean, that's a form of shadow work. If anything, that's pure shadow work, because it's not two-dimensional. It literally reflects what's going on inside of you. And even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else, it still has that core element of being authentic, of being honest.
That's what it's supposed to be. I don't know. I don't really label the writing as anything except for what it is. It's harder for me to write unless I feel it, more or less. There's plenty of other opinions and stuff that I have written about and I've published. But for me, I feel when it's something I relate to, whether I like it or not, that's when the power of speech really comes out. And I also enjoy articulation, and I like playing with words. I like using colloquial language. I like to express myself in a higher way. That often gets me in trouble because a lot of people may not know what egregious means, or, or banal, or,
It's like, Puppy, she's using big words again.
Oh, no. It's funny because I used to go on dates and it just comes out and stuff, and they're looking at me with like deer in headlights.
Well, some of it is the conditioning, and you've talked about it, I've talked about it, Shai talks about it, Sid and Papa were talking about it. When we're conditioned that we're supposed to act a particular way, we're supposed to sound a particular way, and that's the general narrative. Anybody that kind of shines differently tends to freak people the fuck out, and they react one of two ways. It's the fight or flight. You know what I mean? So they're either like, heretic, and they're pointing their finger and they're losing their fucking minds, or like you said, they're terrified, and the only thing they can think of is to run the other fucking way.
But I also, I don't know the entire dictionary, okay? And there are words I may have forgotten the meaning of. And I'm not afraid to ask what you're saying. So if you tell me something and I don't quite understand you, I'm going to say, can you explain it again? I didn't quite understand you. Or can you tell me what is it called? Wait, what was the one with Trump? Ivanka Trump. What was that? There was a word. It started with a C, and I forgot it. But it was in an interview, and this lady asked her a question, and the word, which begins with the letter C, means illegal.
Okay.
And I forgot the word, though. It's going to happen.
It'll happen in the middle of the show. It'll just be like,
this
that's
is also
the word.
part of almost 50. Sometimes you forget shit.
Listen, I was forgetting shit at 17. So, I mean, again, some of this I think is relevant to context. Witchy, bitchy.
Complicit.
Nikki,
that's the word.
Right, complicit. She says death of a spouse is life-changing. Twice she's taken that journey to its completion. Yeah, I mean, there are no words, unfortunately. You can express condolences and sympathy, and those of us that have gone through it, yourself, myself, Shai has gone through it. You know what I mean? they change you in ways, again, that it's hard to kind of put a single word or even a group of words to. But ultimately, I think also, again, it reminds us of how precious, how important life is, because at any given moment, we lose it.
Yes, exactly. And it's, what's really funny when you have a traumatic event happen, like, whatever, the death or a divorce or something, anything, right? Any huge traumatic change to you. Okay. When you find people that went through the same thing or have a similar path in that vein, you tend to all huddle together. And it's really funny because I had never really gotten into Facebook until my husband died. And all of a sudden, I'm making cyber friends. And it became safe for me because I still wasn't ready to socialize, but it was a great medium for me to text, to go into Facebook and to go into a private
It allowed you
group
to interact with some boundaries that you could control ultimately without, having to worry about it, as they say.
Well, exactly. And you're also not at their face. But then as you get confident, maybe you'll meet the person. But this is what I remember. I remember the term norms. These norms don't understand. And it's like, what's normal? Huh? Norm? And I remember kind of agreeing with it. And then there were people that didn't agree with that term. Like, what? So does that make me abnormal? You can feel very abnormal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a fucking loaded word because, normal to one person is fucking insanity to the next. So, whenever I hear normal, it's a trigger. I'm just like, oh shit, what's coming out of the fucking woodwork now?
Wow, witchy bitchy Nikki. I'm very sorry for your loss. It says death of a spouse is life-changing. Twice I've taken that journey to its completion. Wow. Sorry for that.
Yeah, listen, I mean, again, it's a common element that a lot of people go through. Mary Beth has said also, too, in the chat, people are people, even in person, social media, it's all the same shit. I would suggest social media enables people to, be a lot more phony. You can pretend to be just about fucking anything, snatch somebody's picture, throw it up there and be like, hi, I'm Barbie. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, you're Larry. But we live in a world now where, a lot of the things that we grew up with, as an example, really just, they don't apply anymore. I guess that's some of the adaptation, like you were saying, as we go through those traumas, as Witchy says, 100% of us have gone through it to some degree or another.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I think how do I put this? The secret to the sauce, it would be how let me see, I'm trying to word this positively, but in other words, you take the experience and you grow from it and you learn from it and you allow the change within yourself, but you don't always identify with that. So, like, yes, I'm a widow, but that's not the only thing I am.
Right. It doesn't define who you are.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it helped maybe change who I was, or maybe brought out the real me, let's say. Maybe other things brought out the real me. But at the end of the day, like, you have to accept the change. Okay. And I also agree with Witchy Bitchy Nikki. I like that name, actually. There are no levels of grief. It is all in the depths.
No, it's very well said, because you can't compare levels of pain.
No, but it can. Some people can take it in a competitive vein.
Well, it's the attention, right? Like, for some people, negative attention is better than no fucking attention.
Yeah.
And grief is a great point, that you can kind of replay over and over again, because it elicits that emotion. You know what I mean? People are like, oh, wow, that sucks. And you know what I mean? It's just like, how do you, not react to it in a particular way? Because if you do, ultimately it forces you in the position of the bad guy. It's like, oh, what? You don't care. You have no compassion. So, we have these weird little paradoxes of, how much do we really care versus, is somebody legitimately struggling? I would rather be wrong for the right reasons. And I know you take that perspective as well. Mary Beth says, pain defines who we are. It changes us and we either grow or go deeper down that rabbit hole. And you've been down a couple of rabbit holes over the years.
Yeah, but like each one has its own different layer. And sometimes you dig tunnels. It's really interesting, but at the end of the day,
did you make the left turn at Albuquerque like I did?
More like yes, and ended up in Cincinnati. Absolutely.
Oh wow, fucking Cincinnati.
I know, at WKRP.
Oh yeah, no, that's an old shout out. Wow, I haven't thought about that one in a fucking long time. But yeah, listen, I mean, again, some of this does reflect, the elements of experience, but it also is reflective to how we grow up. I know you've talked a lot about the influences growing up within your family, certain cultural dynamics, and certain expectations that get thrown into the mix about, how you're supposed to be by this point in life. I still get people to look at me and they're like, what the, you got long hair? And I'm like, yeah, I got fucking long hair. I don't give a fuck anymore, to the degree that if you're going to judge me on my hair, you're going to judge me on something fucking anyway. So I might as well be who I am. And that's one of the things I've loved about you. You're just like, hey, this is who I am. Take it or fucking leave it.
Well, or like the woman that dyes her hair a million colors and she's 50 plus. Kudos for her.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I like purple.
Shia loves purple too.
Yeah. And I mean, it is what it is, but the good news about growing up is that you can still be yourself anyway, in spite of whatever you're in. So like, even if you're in corporate America, you're still gonna come out, like, somehow. the person you are is still gonna come out.
Well, you may be a little bit fucked up. I know, and Shai will testify to this. It took me a little bit to decompress from, a lot of that conditioning elements because, for the longest time, like you, the only real focus I had was being a parent. And especially as a single parent, you don't always get the luxury to be anything or anyone else. You and I were just joking, before we started the show that you actually have some Guyana time to hang out and talk and joke and stuff like that. And, we actually have to look at that like it's like it's fucking Christmas. It's like, wow, I get a gift. I get time for myself.
But you know what? I also, yes, there is a special, Diana time is definitely a gift. But the other thing that I also try and do is whatever I want when I'm with whomever I want in that situation. I'm finding myself less able to not do what I want. One thing is when you're at work and you're doing, a collaborative thing with your peers, with your coworkers, and it's been decided you're not the boss, but you're going to do your job as best as you can do your job. And then you're still going to behave as you are. And clearly there's the job me, but I don't really have a job me. I'm just me. I think I'm only me.
Hey, listen, props to you for being able to find that balance. I tried dancing it and it didn't work real well for me, but that doesn't mean it won't and it can't work for somebody else. Again, we can agree to disagree. We don't all have to be literally marching in step on everything, but when we can find those common elements, as Shia says, whatever makes you happy. And my sister, Mary Beth, she's like 47 and I've dyed my hair twice this week. Good for you, sister.
Yay!
Yeah, Mary Beth is part of the Inner Demon media crew. We call her the meme queen, and
Sweet.
Kind of within the scope, like how you're the assassin queen, Chanel is the goblin queen, and Suzanne is the beaver queen. So we got a lot of witchy queens.
If she's mean, then I'm trying to picture I mean, I'm trying to picture what level of mean.
Oh, listen, she can crack out some wickedly, viciously humorous types of things, and she frames them kind of almost like a storyboard a lot of times. When we do the Inner Demon radio shows, and and Sid will be doing like the Delinquents Ball and stuff, we literally have fucking meme wars where we'll just start on a fucking particular tangent. There'll be men in Speedos dancing around like, hey, look at me, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it'll be Ren and Stimpy or fucking Beavis and Butthead or some other horrible feet-oriented things. Mary Beth and Lindsay and Munastera and a bunch of the other witches within the circle. They have some wicked humor, and they're not afraid to fucking use it. You know what I'm saying? So especially, Mary Beth's like foot pics. Yeah. And that. Listen, it's important. And I think especially now more than ever, we can't be afraid to talk. We can't be afraid to express ourselves. You know what I mean? That this is, I think, what's fed a lot of the insanity is everybody's afraid to communicate. Everybody's afraid to talk. You know what I mean?
You just segued into another topic of interest. And here's...
I have a way of doing that, setting it up. It's like a slow curveball over the fucking middle of the plate.
And I appreciate this. But here's I've noticed that there's a price to our First Amendment on social media. Okay?
Oh, absolutely.
We're supposed to be able to express ourselves in however way we want. And and then of course there's like, you can't be mean to people. You can't show people killing others. And, you can't, there's a lot of things that you have to censor. Okay. Sometimes there's, it takes away the choice, Well, I mean,
some of it is things that are out of control. Like, again, you and I come from the old school context that it's not the content's fault. It's the people who are obviously either trying to censor it, or especially when you talk in the dynamics of children. Well, if you're a child's parent, you should be paying attention to what the fuck it is that they're looking. You know what I mean? It's the rest of us shouldn't have to suffer because you're too fucking lazy to monitor that they shouldn't be in a particular place. I understand we have to have certain guidelines. You know what I mean? We can't just let shit be open-ended because people will fucking take advantage of it. You know what I mean? But half of it is stereotype, which he says, being witty and smart is half the reason peasants fear witches to this day. I would humbly suggest that's why the powers that be don't want the conversations. What better way to keep a population divided and controlled by keeping them fucking at each other's throats and stupid? You know what I mean? Because a lot of it is fucking stupid. You and I have talked about it. It's almost baffling. It's just like, how do people even think that this is a real thing? but some of it is that censorship, like you say.
Well, it's also, how do you direct thought, right, to the masses? It's what they can find and what they can't find on their own. Okay, like that book. What is it? Fahrenheit 451. Ray Bradbury, where the book is about burning information, and only one information allowed. And I'm sadly watching this happen here in Florida with books.
Oh, it's happened all over the place.
And it's like, so it's happening up where you're at in New York?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's happening all over the fucking place. It just is not as vocal in some places as others. But listen, this has been an ongoing, you and I both know this has been a historical narrative forever. You know what I mean? Every civilization has this fucking stupidity where, it has to be one way or no way. My God's better than yours. You know what I mean? Or, some other...
Joe Pesci is the almighty sovereign of thought.
What, am I, a comedian? I'm fucking here to amuse you? Listen, I would vote for Joe Pesci for president at this particular fucking juncture. I'm not going to lie. And which he says, a lot of it is contrived division. You know what I mean? A lot of it is just rhetoric spun around what I like to call weaponized empathy. You pick a narrative of something that's threatening, that's scary. Ooh, all these trans people are coming to convert your children. No, they're not.
Wait, what was that meme that I saw on Facebook or on Imager the other day? Like, smart people are censoring themselves so that stupid people don't get offended or something.
Yeah.
I mean, so that idiots don't get offended. And like, what really makes you an idiot? I mean, what is an idiot? An idiot is someone not just that they don't know, but that they don't care to be educated. I mean, what is a real idiot? What is that? Seriously. What is an
Again,
idiot?
some of it I think is defined by context because, there is a case to be made. And I know a lot of people, and I've met them over the years in different parts of the country, that because of one element in their life, and I'll use religion because religion tends to be. Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you cut off for just a second.
Technology. This is what happens when we run live. I use religion as the example because religion tends to frame a particular narrative that justifies being indoctrinated into said religion. So, AKA, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And anybody who acts like this or talks like this is a fucking demon, and they're coming for your soul. So
and
when
the power of Christ will be compelling you.
The power of Christ compels you. Now, that's not to say that, spirituality and faith aren't beautiful things, but when it's weaponized, you have a lot of people that all they've heard through their lives is this particular narrative. So when they encounter it in real life, all they have is that conditioning to say, oh, well, my pastor says that, anybody who dresses like, a dog is, a heretic and is going to hell, you know what I mean? They're going to approach it from that. And it's because they haven't had anything else to change their narrative. You know what I mean? Especially when you go to places in this country where, you have these small town communities. They're not bad people, but they don't have the same type of exposure, the same type of influences, and especially when you look at it culturally and within the scope of how families, the hereditary conditioning, you know what I mean? You can't change, 100, 150 years, 200 plus years worth of programming in just a day or a night or a year or even 10 years.
But you can introduce a new thought. Here's a great example. And, God forgive what I'm about to say. Okay?
No, your God is not here now.
But no, exactly. But as an educator, I taught English as a second language, and I met plenty of students, of adult students from different countries, okay, from different cultures. And so I will tell you that meeting people from Arabic countries, okay, and meeting their, watching their wonderment, let's say, of the difference between our culture and their culture, where they're from, okay, and looking at how young they are. And also observing some of them are proud of, I find them to be incredibly proud of themselves. Some of them are aware that, yeah, they're in the United States and everything, but they're still going to be wearing their hijab, and they're still going to be wearing their, the clothes that they wear. And I forget the name of like the shroud, that the piece of clothing that covers them, let's say. And they're still going to be themselves, and it's okay. And that's them. And then there are those that come here and, you know what? They want to, their hair is really nice and they want to show it off. And they're single and they're not married yet. And you know what? I'm here in the United States. I really would like my hair to be out. And so I noticed that difference. I also noticed how, to me, it's an intriguement. I'm intrigued with them because, number one, I can't relate to writing differently. So I'm Hispanic from South America. So I can relate to learning language, but I can't relate to learning a different modality to write. The A still looks like an A, the B still looks like a B.
Same thing within Asian cultures using calligraphy and stuff like that, right?
So I'm more amazed by that difference because it's a whole level of your brain. I mean, for me to try and write and read Arabic, okay, completely different. And it's it's literally backwards. Because you're now reading from right to left, not from left to right. And I mean, going back to, okay, now I'm in a different place. Now I see women wearing, tank tops and shorts and with their hair out. And, men and women can hold hands and men actually can kiss women hello and they don't have to be married.
Well, I mean, hell, men can kiss men, you know what I mean? In certain parts of the Arab world, that's literally, no pun intended, your ass. That's it, the end. You know what I mean? And I think we take that for granted within our culture. For as crazy as it can be, we still have a lot of freedoms and a lot of really powerful, beautiful elements that you don't see in other places in the fucking world. And they come here and they look at it and they're like, wow. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that they should lose their culture. I believe everybody should be allowed to express themselves. That's what this country was founded on, was religious freedom, was a simple concept that all men were created equal. And I know I'm going to get shit for that, but you know what I mean? Truly, all people are created equal. Granted, their language wasn't correct for the time period, but that was reflective of the time, not of the sentiment per se. And we continue to evolve. I had my mother on the show, and, she grew up in a dynamic whereas, she couldn't have a bank account or a credit card of her own until the 70s, because even after everything we went through, women were still considered second-class citizens within the United States. We forget that it hasn't been that long in our evolution that we're just finally getting around. And it's always, in the 60s, we had a lot of the race dynamics, the 70s and the 80s. We kind of pretended like it went away. It came back in the 90s. And we're still dancing it. We're dancing it within sexuality. We're dancing it, obviously, still within the racial elements. And now, even more so, we have this polarized dynamic, which says we don't even want to talk about it. We're going to pull the books. We're going to fucking erase it and pretend like it didn't happen, because some people are obviously uncomfortable with it.
In my point of view, though, some of the people making the change forgot what they were when they were young. For example, the abortion. Okay. I have met Karens who forgot that when they were 20, they weren't virgins. And they suddenly agreed with this abortion bill. And I'm wondering, but why? Wait a minute. I knew you back then. What were you thinking?
Well, listen, it's always convenient. We switch the narrative when it suits us. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about self-rationalization is you can create whatever fucking reality you want.
Oh God, but still, it's just ignorance can only be remedied. Stupidity is incurable. Yes, it is.
It is.
You can't cure stupid when stupid wants to be
But
cured.
as Witchy says, and I think aptly so, a lot of it is semantics, because depending upon the context and the situation, it doesn't always hold true. We're not all equal, unfortunately. It's a great line, you know what I mean? It's cool to throw it out and, at a dinner party and be like, yeah, we're all, but we're not. You know what I mean? It's kind of fucking obvious. You know what I mean? We can all agree to disagree, about certain elements of things, but I think the narrative has been for quite a long time is that, a lot of this has just been smoke and mirrors. It has been talk. You know what I mean? Whereas we keep spinning out of fucking control. But, some of this also, too, is, depending upon what side of the fence you happen to be standing on in a particular moment, and you're down in the heart of some conflict there in Florida, to say the least, with what's going on down there.
But the New Yorkers keep on coming, and it's fine. I'm a damn Yankee. I know. I showed up and stayed and stuff, and now I don't.
We got a lot of friends in Florida too, and some of them identify differently. I have a good friend who comes from Turkey, who again was originally raised within the Muslim cultural dynamics and embraced Christianity later on in his life. And one of the things, like you, that I learned in interacting with people from different cultures and different religious things, how much we really are alike. We love our families. You know what I mean? We don't want to be hassled. You know what I mean? Most people are not looking, to fly a plane into a fucking building, or, you know what I mean, go snatch your children from kindergarten and convert them into, fucking furries, but that fear is a powerful weapon. When you can keep people scared and, looking over their shoulders, all of a sudden now you can create a narrative around it.
Oh yeah, but and it's all about the children. That's where this mentorship is really coming from. It's coming from, why are you erasing history? For what purpose? I mean, for whom? Because in the end of the day, information is the root of research and education. Okay, what is wrong with knowledge? Let's see. It invokes free thought and critical thinking and rational, logical comparison to certain ideals that are spoken by, say, the authority. So that would be bad for some people. Some people don't like that challenge. As an instructor, in my years of being an educator, I was taught to teach critical thinking, and then all of a sudden I'm not allowed to do that anymore.
Well, I mean, again, especially if it challenges the control dynamic, you know what I mean, that obviously by its very definition makes you a threat. And that's where the narrative has really become now, is that these things magically have become threats in our lives. You know what I mean? I was talking with my buddy Chris Miller the other night, and, he's an old school Southern country kind of, right-wing kind of guy. But even he's like, this is ridiculous. I don't give a fuck who's trying to fuck who, as long as they're not trying to fuck me or my kids. You know what I mean? And if we could all just adapt just that little simple, we don't have to agree, but as long as it's not crossing particular boundaries, why are we so concerned? And the narrative I keep coming back to is because it keeps us fucking distracted from the other really horrible shit that's, going on. Like over by us, we're under a hardcore air quality alert because there's so much of Canada that's burning. We literally have, clouds of ash and smoke that are drifting across the entire fucking country here. And, people are like, well, there's nothing to see here. And it's like, there's half a continent fucking burning. You know what I mean? Maybe we need to wake up and take a look at this before everything fucking burns. And that's just one of many narratives that just keeps getting kicked down the road.
Yeah. All of a sudden, Al Gore and his inconvenient truth really became like, it's sad to me, because all he was doing was citing facts at that time, right?
Well, I mean, again, science is fake news, don't you know?
But I don't know if you've ever watched Bill Maher's Religulous.
Are you kidding me?
So you have.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I followed Bill Maher for years. And listen, I try and identify in the middle. You know what I mean? I understand and I respect certain conservative values, but I also believe in things like science. I believe in a woman's right to choose. I don't agree with abortion from the moral context, but I also respect the fact that it's not my fucking choice to make. It really isn't. I'm not going to be raising this
you're
child.
not going to pay for the baby in the
Right,
long
exactly.
run. You're not going to fund it or anything, and neither are these conservative people that are, how dare you abort this creature of God? It's like, dude, but are you going to support this person?
But listen, they're the
Are you
first. They're the
going to
first
pay?
one that want to strap a fucking 18-year-old black kid into the electric chair because he sold a couple of fucking nickel bags on the corner, and that's actually within the last 50 years. That again, we talk about it on one side of the fence, but they're the first ones. Hey, let's go drop some let's drop some bombs on some brown people. You know what I mean? In the name of God, that's okay. But no, we don't want to kill the unborn because we need them to become fucking drones to keep going out there and milking the land and
then I wonder. I mean, what has really dropped the birth rate? Think about it.
I mean, some of it, I think, again, every successive generation, and I've talked to my son and others of his generation, they look at it and they're like, you know what I mean? They don't see any point to it. They look at it almost in the dynamic of, why would anybody want to subjugate somebody else to this fucking insanity? Which, don't get me wrong, I love being a father. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But there was a point in my life for many years that I was part of that crowd. I was never going to have a fucking kid because the world, as far as I was concerned, was too fucked up. You know what I mean? That to me almost seems like a crime to like, okay, misery loves company, so let's just make another me to suffer along with me.
And then I did always want a child, and I did always want that life. And it's not because it was more or less a program. It was more like, well, you know what? I wanted the experience. And I had the control. And you know what? I still do have the control. In spite of my son's disability, that doesn't mean that I don't control what he's exposed to, how I teach him to think. Listen, he has his disabilities and he has his cognitive difficulties, but I'm going to tell you something. That kid is smart. That kid surprises me on how he can critically think about certain things. And I'm okay with it. And I praise him for it.
Well, listen,
yet,
I mean, again, we know scientifically that, we just don't understand a lot of these aspects. And just because they don't fit into the quote unquote normal box somehow makes them less than. You know what I mean? And I think that that's, really a crime because, as you said, many of these people, men and women who are labeled this way, actually have incredible gifts, incredible insight. They have just as much, if not more, love and compassion in them. And we do ourselves a disservice by just kind of, herding them up and saying, okay, well, let's just throw some drugs at them because, use your earlier analogy, it's a fucking inconvenient truth.
But I'll tell you, I mean, some people won't have kids because they don't feel that they're sane enough or that they don't have. I mean, some people shouldn't have children. I can't agree with that analogy.
We're going to say that out loud. Some of you all shouldn't be reproducing out there.
Yeah, just don't. Just, don't, please no. Don't multiply. Don't add to the population. But if you do choose to add to the population, please know what you're doing. Please understand what that really means because it does take a significant amount of compromise. And as far as censorship, okay, I mean, if you're going to look at censorship within yourself, I mean, you can look at it as, some people take parenting as a way to improve themselves, or or maybe they just see where that goes. And then some people have children and then they regret it and then they can't handle it. And then what was I thinking? And
Yeah,
then
and
they
then
don't
they
get
stick the
past.
rest of us with dealing with their fucking bastard spawns of demon hell and all kinds of other shit. Which, listen, don't get me wrong, it's not the children's fault. You know what I mean? That's ultimately, I think, the bottom line in this. Children will reflect what they are exposed to. So when people run around and be like, "Oh, they're just a bunch of animals," it's like, well, where do you think they fucking learned that from? You know what I mean? They don't just come out and just be like, "How can I start carnage?" It's it's conditioned. Jonathan makes a little bit of a subtle, cheeky ploy about the mandatory sterilization, but I would submit, and this is the double standard, that if somebody were introduced and say, "Hey, the government now, instead of going after women's vaginas, are now going to come after men's dicks," we would be having a whole nother fucking conversation. It'd be like, no, my personal freedoms, my dick is mine. You know what I mean? So it really is a fucking double standard to say, hey, let's tell women what to do with their bodies, but men could just run around like fuckboys and, we're all supposed to just be cool and casual with it because somebody wrote in a book somewhere, be fruitful and multiply.
Well, but then I'm just glad that they haven't outlawed condoms. But seriously, it's also abstinence, and not so much abstinence. Like, you can do what you want. I'm not saying like don't have sex, but I am stating that it's your choice to behave as you want. Just be. When I was a teacher for the public school system, I couldn't touch sexuality. I could only touch sexually transmitted diseases, and this is what happens, not just babies, but your dick will rot and your vagina will explode into a million warts. And,
which is really a visual that I did not see. Thank you for finally finding a way to make me cringe, as Shia says.
But it's funny because I'll never forget the Eddie Murphy Delirious.
Oh yeah.
When he talks about AIDS and he talks about like your penis will just explode. Like,
well, I mean, again, during that time period, sometimes the only way to get people to fucking actually connect with something is indirectly. You have to kind of almost trick them into it with like comedy or something else off base to get them to be like, well, yeah, maybe we should take this seriously. You know what I mean? Because, death is still fucked up. Granted, I don't know if it's really a difference if your head explodes, your dick explodes, or your heart explodes. Death is fucking death. But, especially with men, if you throw the dick card out there, it tends to wake them the fuck up. So, I'm all for anything that gets people to, take an actual look at what's going around them, especially when you talk about things like AIDS. But, as a parent, I'm sure you can also agree, we have to have some type of fine line with the sexuality, because I don't agree that children should be exposed to sexual dynamics at an early age. I think that really should be something, that's handled by the parents. You know what I mean? I don't think that should be government's part. Schools were never designed to be, the end all of all information and everything like that. It's supposed to come from the home to certain degrees. Now, don't get me wrong, especially if it's not coming from the home, people still need information. So, that context, we shouldn't be having the conversation with a 5-year-old, but, 12 and 13-year-olds and, anything from there going on up, you and I both know kids are having sex at 12, 13 years old now.
Yeah, but it's also the music videos and all that stuff that they're watching, and that's such a young age.
Exactly. We'll go after the drag shows in the libraries, but we're not going to go after music videos or the porn industry or anybody else that's been sexualizing shit for the past 200 fucking years.
Wait, and what was that show called? Cuties? The one that was pointless or something? The one that made most parents quit Netflix because what was that show about again?
I have no idea. I missed that whole little. I try and ignore some of these really fucking
No.
whack out type of things that pop up within pop culture because it's just so fucking ridiculous, like the Tide Pod challenge. I'm like, who even thinks that this is, and a bunch of kids were fucking eating Tide Pods. You know what I mean? It's fucking ridiculous.
Well, and then of course, I'll admit to this, okay? Someone told me about Cuties and have you seen this show? And I'm like, okay, well, fine, let me watch it. Of course, it's like 3 a.m. My son's asleep. Nobody's, because I have to know why this is so terrible. And then I'm like, not only is it the most ridiculous, stupid movie ever, but it really is all about these little prepubescent girls gyrating and dancing and all this, with all their sexually, with all that stuff. Like,
oh, listen, we do it in the schools with the cheerleading squads, but, God forbid, we don't want to touch football because that's American. You know what I mean? Fuck that. But, well, yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I could see why parents would be like, no, that should be an adult show. That shouldn't be PG-13.
Well, listen, I agree. I have a friend, Matt Brown, who does a lot of the vocals on my music, and he lives in Texas. And he's a conservative guy, but, he's not a racist. He's not a fucking Nazi. He's just like, listen, I don't want this shit around my kids. These are my kids. And, him and his wife will talk to their kids when they feel it's appropriate to have a conversation about sex. It's nobody else's right. I mean, that as a parent too, but there's, again, where some of the disconnect is, what I mean? I saw something floating around that, they were pushing like, elementary schools have, litter boxes for children who identify as cats.
Oh, yeah. My favorite.
Just like, is that, the same source as, like the satanic Democratic pedophiles hiding in the pizza parlor down in Washington, D.C., or, any one of these other, really crazy analogies. Now, in fairness, though, we talk about other things and it gets swept under the rug. Like, we know priests have been fucking little children since the Catholic Church showed up. And nobody says, well, it's the Catholic Church's fault because, God is infallible. But yet every other week, every other month, you're seeing these settlements and, they're just moving around these creepy old guys like fucking vampires to, different, churches and stuff. And they just keep throwing children to them, like they're cookies.
No, and it's also like, when does that change for the religion, for example? Now they have included deacons, and deacons can be married and preach. So they gave it another name.
Well, I mean, I think that's the Wizard of Oz smoke and mirrors. Don't look behind the fucking curtain type of thing. You know what I mean? Because, again, when you have one end of the spectrum, screaming about, sexuality and, you know what I mean? Oh, the children. Well, where were you when all these children, were going through what they were going through? You know what I mean? So,
here's the other thing that I find to be interesting. On the one hand, because I consider myself an internationally educated person, I can't help but observe the difference in, say, nudity and how Europe took it. Okay. Like, you'd go to the beach and you're going to see mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, children in their birthday suits in the beach. And it's not going to be a terrible thing. Okay. Like, it's not totally.
Listen, you do that here in New York, you're going to end up on the sex offenders list.
Well, but what I'm trying to tell you is other places are less conservative about the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So they don't, so the more exposure you get to it, it's like the more you cover up, the more, oh my God, but if you've seen boobs since you were, born and stuff, and yeah, like it does remove a little bit of the mystique. Okay. I mean, that's not to say that people can still look pretty or whatever, but it's just like, it's not.
But sexuality is part of who we are. as men and women, or if you identify otherwise, and again, it's not a right or wrong. It's just, okay, how does that translate to you? But again, the double standard is, we're concerned about this particular cherry pick dynamic, but everything else we're just going to fucking ignore. You know what I mean? As Jonathan says, we have literal religious orders that are like, yes, fuck children, go ahead. Yes, have multiple wives, sure, go ahead. You know what I mean? And everybody's like, well, that's their freedom of religion. But, the children, in that particular element, they don't
for
count.
The religion that says I could have multiple husbands.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that gets back to the double standard, as a couple of people mentioned.
I would have no problem being married to like
when men
9
are
guys that
flexing their power,
it's
it's cool. But when women flex their power, men tend to lose their fucking minds. I mean, it's changing, but it's slowly changing. And, to some degrees, I think it's the narrative that, we're afraid as an overall general dynamic to have these conversations. I'm going to cut to a quick track because I don't want to forget to play. This is a new track from Frail. They're covering Soundgarden's music, and it's a really powerful thing because it speaks to the dynamic of suicide. For those of you who don't know, Chris Cornell took his own life. He was the lead singer for Soundgarden, and Frail took the track for this compilation album that was done in memory of Chris Cornell and Soundgarden's music. And it's really, really powerful imagery, powerful song. So we're going to take a break. We're going to play Frail's Head Down for the first time. It was just released a couple of days ago. And then we will be back. Enjoy. So yeah, that was Frail with their cover of Soundgarden's Head Down, or the new Super Unknown Redux, which is a compilation, a lot of different bands paying tribute to Soundgarden and obviously losing Chris Cornell. And many times, and this is one of those common elements, music will reflect a person's experience, their pain, their confusion, but it still will carry forward, even though they may no longer be with us. The message is still powerful. It's still important. So really, again, wanted to shout out Frail for what they did. So Diana has, as we discuss, a little bit of stuff she wants to kind of throw into the mix as we dance with our wolves here in regards to how we close out the show. So why don't you let us know how you want to run that?
Well, no, I had the idea of talking about the change that I noticed with women and working during COVID. And when COVID hit and all the schools shut down, suddenly everybody had to be home. And I think a lot of moms woke up to what their kids were really doing and what they were watching and what activities they were up to. And it became rather apparent that, it's time to pay closer attention to their kids. Because as you're working and you leave the house and you have to commune with the coworkers and earn your money and support yourself and children and everything. And this isn't just single moms, it's just moms in general that have jobs, right?
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, they awoke to, holy shit, is this what my 14-year-old kid was doing? What? Oh shit.
Yeah, it was a fucking wake-up call for a lot of people.
For a lot of people. And it's funny because I remember taking jujitsu classes and I spoke to policemen and I asked a very general question. I said, well, so I live, here in Florida and in this neighborhood. What have you seen a shift in like calls relating to children and stuff like that, to adolescents and things? Because I have an adolescent. And they did say that they looked at me and said, are you a mom of an adolescent? And I go, yeah. And they're like, do you work from home? Yes, I do. Stay home. Please stay home. Because, for the record, because kids are home and moms have to be home and moms and dads have to pay attention, a lot of those phone calls have dropped because now parents have to pay attention to that. And that doesn't mean that parents were always paying attention, because it is quite easy to close the door and work and not be distracted and not, and still do your job or whatever you need to do, because it isn't very easy to have a job, work from home, and then your kid is behind you with the TV blaring or something like that.
Well, I mean, that's the cultural narrative to some degrees. A lot of parents think, well, my job is to simply go out and make money to provide X resources. And unfortunately, the trade-off is they're not engaged or involved with their kid's life.
But I did notice that there is more hybrid opportunities out there because of that reason. So it's like those of us who got the opportunity to work from home are now clawing at being able to stay home. Why? We save money on childcare. Not only do we save money on childcare, but we have paid much more attention to what our children are doing. And hence kids are now aware that mom gives a shit and no, you're not fucking doing that anymore.
Well, I mean, it goes back to the narrative that if you want to change things, the first and most obvious place is we need to do a better job at raising our children, pure and simple.
It is very true. But we can also multitask as moms. We're pretty good at it. We are the master multitaskers. Hello. Believe me.
See, why do I feel
Yeah.
like a little worm on a big fucking hook again?
It's not to say that men don't have the ability.
No,
Of course,
I'm joking with you. Like I said, I'm all cool with hanging on the cross for the rest of fucking mankind.
but and actually, you and I, we were talking about this briefly, but I will say that one of the things that I did hear a lot about men who had to raise their children by themselves, particularly the widowed guys, that there was a lot of sexism out there, and I definitely don't doubt that. And I find that to be very, very unfair because guys are expected to be the breadwinners and to, keep at it and stuff like that. But men aren't always expected to have to also change diapers and cook, and and it's not to say that guys don't. It has shifted since the time when I was a kid, but definitely for men who have 4-year-olds at home and their wives die or something, suddenly everything about their lives have to change because now someone has to pay attention to a little 4-year-old. I mean, I remember in the widow community, well, men can hire women. Not necessarily. Hello? No, not really. But my heart really went out to them because single moms raising kids, unable to work, can have access to certain community things. Okay? We can have help. And we can be rather resourceful because we only have the time to be. And of course, we need to be resourceful. If we cannot leave the house and earn money like the rest of the universe because we have little kids at home. But men, unfortunately, and I mean, you're an example. Okay. You had to raise.
Believe me, I went through it and I know all too well. But listen, some of it is the cognitive choice. I made a choice. You know what I mean? I could have done it otherwise. I could have done this. I could have done that. I didn't want to. So in many ways, I chose the destiny. I don't regret it. But like you said, I learned a lot about, how things will play out depending upon people's perception. And for men, unfortunately, we're conditioned to look at emotion as a weakness, that women are somehow less than, that they have specific narratives as mothers, as wives, you know what I mean, that they're supposed to serve, obey, all that fucked up.
Obey?
Yeah,
really?
but listen, but this from the religious dynamic. That's the narrative.
Okay.
That was the conditioning that I was exposed to. That's what my grandfather preached. It's what my father preached. And if it wasn't for my mother, that's how I would have ended up. You know what I mean?
We obey, but we have our fingers crossed.
But listen, but that's the control narrative.
Yes,
That's what has fit fucking historically.
Of course, dear.
The backlash, and I understand it. I really do. And I try and convey that. Whereas I didn't enjoy a lot of those experiences, I understand why, after so many generations, thousands of years of male toxicity and just, waving their dicks in the fucking air, that women are just like, you know what? We've dealt with this for too long. Y'all not hearing us, so we got to try something different. And, a lot of men are losing their fucking minds because, they're either getting canceled or, having to deal with, intelligent women who are just like, yeah, no, and it freaks them out because they're, everything they used to know now is fucking upside down.
You just reminded me of, what is it called? Oh God, my CRS is kicking in. Oh, Team America. They have intelligence. Oh no. We've lost intelligence.
Some do. As was said earlier, not everybody is created equal, unfortunately.
But the wonderful tapestry of life, or at least life here in the United States, okay, is the ability to change and to evolve and to take a look at different norms. Hence, like men being able to stay home while women work, let's say. There's plenty of those out there. Plenty of guys are the ones that are home, raising their, being home dads, and the wives are the ones that are working. And sometimes it really is like who succeeds or who's got that better paying job, or, and sometimes it's a necessary evil, and there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing at all, because somebody has to be home, and at least somebody's home.
Well, listen, you and I both know that not everybody, depending upon where you are and literally where you are in life, you don't always get that luxury. You know what I mean? A lot of people have to work multiple jobs just to be able to pay basic bills. So when you have a society that's kind of structured that says, hey, we're defined by our material worth, but we don't reinforce it with the tools and the resources so that way you can actually do it. It creates a disconnect where, a lot of parents are out there struggling just to keep the roof over their head. And unfortunately, the side effect is that their kids are out doing things and being exposed to, all kinds of fucked up things that, as you said, they have no clue about. And then by the time they do find out, usually it's on the back end of some fucking tragedy.
Well, yeah, it's not just that. It's not just what they see online. It's what they're seeing in schools and what they don't see in schools anymore, which is free thought. Okay? Which is critical thinking. That's or rather, I don't know. To me, it's sad.
Well, I
but
mean,
hey, I could always bring my gun to class.
Well, hey, that'll solve everything now, won't it?
Exactly, right? Very sad.
Which again isn't to say again that, people should not have the right to it, but you have to call into question if we don't have anything to compensate. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to our children or for those who are, at risk. You know what I mean? It's one of the analogies, and a friend of ours with WRFC, she talks a lot about this, especially within, dynamics of domestic abuse and stuff like that. Women have been under the gun, again, for thousands of years. Violence is continually inflicted upon them. And the narrative always is, she was dressed a particular way, so she was asked, what I mean? All these bullshit analogies to justify, and, as Witchy says, what is going on in our schools to our children, a lot of people, they're not fucking happy with. You know what I mean? They don't like it. It doesn't mean that they're wrong, per se. But you and I both know, and again, it more so as being a teacher, that you can only do so much. You know what I mean? You cannot be expected to assume the responsibility for all these children around you. That's the parent's job. And I understand it's hard, but that's kind of like the disconnect, like you said earlier. You know what I mean? We want to protect the unborn child, but we don't want to be involved in actually raising the goddamn child.
Well, unfortunately, if you chose to add to the population, you should want to be involved in raising or having some effect to the outcome of your spawn. I mean, seriously. I mean, and then of course, if you can't or you have to put it up for adoption, that's very nice and noble of you. Okay, wonderful. But at the end of the day, if you're choosing to have a baby, you have to also choose to understand what that means. Yeah. It's like.
And I like what she says. We need to stop the public indoctrination of these dynamics. There's a time and place for everything. And again, I don't begrudge anybody what they want to believe. But again, separating the dynamics, a lot of people, my sister did exactly what she did. She was like, you know what? I'm going to homeskill my children. Part of it was by default, like you said, she had to change the framework when COVID hit. But she saw right off the bat that the dynamics were already changing from when she had been in school, and she just didn't want that narrative around her kids. So her solution was simply, you know what? I'll take responsibility for teaching my children. You know what I mean?
Well,
And she
good.
did. You know, she took the extra classes. She made it a point to do the research. And it wasn't like, you know, she wanted to teach them that the earth was flat. You know what I mean? It wasn't like she was coming from some type of crazy angle about it. But she didn't want other people's narratives being kind of, you know, stuck into the mix. And as Witchy says, you know, the state doesn't need to raise everybody's kids. I understand for some, yeah, maybe that's what has to be done. But I think ultimately a parent has a right to say, hey, you know what? I don't want my child exposed to this.
Well, a parent also can't be chastised for not wanting their child to go to school and meow like a cat. You know, like if you're not I just don't. When did this change again? It changed, I think, like in the 2000s. Okay, because when was it? When did it shift from everybody agreeing with the parents and like the disciplinary side and know you're a human being to how dare you? Your child wants to identify as a cat. How dare you block this from his identity? Because
Well,
it's demeaning.
well, I mean,
It's
again,
fucking demeaning.
I would humbly suggest that it's a disconnect
Like,
from reality.
are you calling, you know, what is it, DCF? Like, what is it? You know,
But listen, you
child
know, back in the
protection
day,
services? Because I don't want my child.
we
to meow
played
like
cops and robbers and cowboys and Indians. It didn't mean that, you know, we were trying to be offensive to the Indian nation, or that just because we played a robber that somehow we were going to go on to commit a life of fucking crime. You know what I mean? I watched Bugs Bunny growing up, and it didn't make me want to put on women's clothes. You know what I mean? And I'm not begrudging anybody's choices, but we've become so paranoid and so oversensitive to these things. And again, I understand people don't want their kids, you know, being forced into these fucking social and cultural conflicts. There's enough insanity out there as it is. But also, too, like you said, you know, where do we draw the fucking line?
I will say this, though. I don't miss being an academic. You know, I don't miss it. I don't miss being a teacher. But part of me does want to go to a classroom and say, gay, 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 gay. You know, everybody say gay. Like, I just
listen, there's enough to trigger fucking people as it is. I know one of the other things, and we were joking about this, and I know it was one of the things that we wanted to joke about, but also talk about seriously, you know, within the process of aging, and more specifically for women, menopause, which, you know, again, of course, men have to have, because, I mean, you know, the first part of menopause is men.
Menopause,
So it's men. Oh, pause. Somehow we managed to get our fingers into everything, no pun intended. But I know for you, and I know Shia and a lot of other women, you're actually embracing those dynamics, rather it be something that now all of a sudden, oh, that limits you. Oh, now you're less than. You're like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm free. And you're embracing it.
Well, you definitely don't give a shit once you're dealing with hormones and hot flashes and, you know, the night sweats suddenly. Like, you're seriously, it's 35 degrees out and the windows are open, but your swamp ass is what woke you up at night. So you're not exactly sleeping well, and you don't know why. And I mean, yeah, there's certain changes that happen to a woman, but at the end of the day, because you're going through some of that, you're less tolerant of buffering and filtering. You're just not going to. You're going to feel your feelings. You're old enough, you know. You don't like something, you want to say gay, you're going to do it.
But it also, listen, again, it doesn't have to define us to the degree, and just use the simple analogy. It doesn't make you less of a woman per se. It doesn't mean that somehow now your life is over. You have now reached your expiration date because you are no longer viable for breeding. You know what I mean? Because that's really what the fucking narrative is. You know what I mean? Obviously, the biological hormonal thing is unique to every woman. You know what I mean? I've had conversations with women over the years, and Shia, and others, that it plays out to similar degrees, but it isn't exactly the same every time. But I know a lot of women, especially now that the narrative is changing, that it's not as a taboo thing, not only to talk about, but to also really, for people to be like, no, that this is not what it is. But also in the same instance, and I know I've had those moments with Shia, as a guy, I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
You don't want to know. But at the end of the day, we are seeing older women still be viable. Okay. We're still out there. We're still able to do what we're doing. We still have whatever we want to do. We still have our thoughts.
You still have your magic too. I look at it like wine. You just get better with age.
You could also, we're embracing age because today we're allowed to. Maybe before, in the old times, by the time you're 50, you're supposed to be a certain way, whatever, but not lately. You can dye your hair right now. You can wear black clothes. You can wear spiked heels. You can wear, Doc Marten steel toe boots. You could, be yourself, and it's okay. Yeah.
Or as my mother Estelle, who's out in the audience, she always likes to lurk, and then she'll just pop in at that particular moment. Her and her friend Linda both just went down about a month or so ago to my buddy Tattoo Tony, and they got tattoos. They're like, yeah, fuck it. You know what I mean? We're going to go get tattoos.
And again, so being here in the United States in the 2023, from the time we grew up, let's say you and I and others of our age group, it is okay to get older. We're still viable. We still mean something. We're still sexy. We can still impart some wisdom. And thankfully, people are listening to what we have to say. And hey, this new generation is remaking some of our songs.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, listen, again, this is part of what I like to call the real magic element. There is a good case to be made about maintaining the positive elements of family, of culture, but also embracing new dynamics, which is like her mom wore mini skirts and halter tops to the end. That's fucking beautiful. She also shared, for all you women out there who maybe are looking for some home remedies, she recommends black cohosh. And she says she hasn't had a bad hot flash in weeks drinking it before bed every night. She says also bear corn, she's been having good results with it. And I do encourage that. And I know Shia encourages that as well, too. Again,
good.
We're not medical practitioners. So, again, we're not going to write you a fucking prescription. But there is a case to be made, again, without being redundant, that the old ways worked for a fucking reason. Okay? You don't have to always go to, the pharmaceutical end of the spectrum to find relief.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do appreciate the more holistic remedies in many ways. And of course, it's diet. Diet is also a big deal. Again, we have more education and more research on certain things that we should stop eating, let's say. And it's not because they told us so. It's because science says that if you keep eating like crap, you're going to only get unhealthier.
That's part of a for-profit medical system. There's no profit in keeping people healthy. We want them to come and buy the drugs and, justify insurance companies.
Exactly.
Well, listen, you and I both know that is our culture's go-to. You don't feel good? Here, take a fucking pill. Is your kid acting out? Here, give them a pill. Your sex life not working? Here's another pill for you. Everything is driven from, hey, we have this magical solution for you, but as long as you have insurance or the money for it. Otherwise, fuck you. You can go live on the street.
But here's the other thing. Some of the ways that people remain young have become more accessible to us underlings. So, for example, I mean, plastic surgery. Thank God for its improvements because some of the people went way overboard about accepting age. And okay, and maybe I make this statement because maybe I look younger than I am. Okay, and great, and I have great genes, and I'm very happy with that. Um, but at the end of the day, I don't know who's telling these women that are famous, you look great, and they look like Daffy Duck.
Well, see, you can get away with saying that. I don't want to get sued by Cardi B or anybody else because we live in a bit of a crazy times. I just made a correlation and I wanted to shout this out. I did not make the correlation between Nikki and a friend of ours, and Diana, you remember Jan Ivy. Witchy Bitchy Nikki obviously is Jan Ivy's daughter. And for those of you who don't know, Jan Ivy was part of our circle, really incredible woman. I had a lot of good conversations with her. She was really funny, very insightful. So, Nikki, for whatever this is worth, your mom touched a lot of people's lives, and know that you will always be welcome in this community. And as Shia said, she was an inspiration to a lot of people.
That's excellent.
Yeah, listen, I mean, again, as we progress, we are now becoming the elders of the tribe. And it's important to keep the narrative, alive. Part of the reason I do this fucking podcast, but also to the degree so that way other people can share, like the different dynamics experiences. Obviously, I can't talk about menopause because I have no, fucking correlation. It's just like, yeah, what, and then Nikki was talking
Unless you want to be trans about this.
Well, listen, I gotta say, I have to say, I am of the mind, you can choose to identify as a particular thing, but unless, you've gone through menstruation or childbirth and stuff, it's not quite the same fucking thing. I'm sorry. No. You know what I mean? And you know this as a mother, as bearing a child, and that's you can't just be like, well, I just relate. No, okay, you can intellectualize it, but you can never truly relate to the dynamic unless you experience it firsthand. So it's pointless for me to come out here and try and be like, well, I understand how women. And no, I don't fucking understand a thing.
Wait, okay, I'm gonna make this mention. I saw this circulated online, and I forget which morning show it was, but there was a trans man, okay, a she. He became a she. What are you going to do? Well, I'm not really sure. Maybe I'll have, maybe I'll give birth or something. Something about get pregnant. And then, of course, the reaction from the host was like, wait, what? What did you just say? And all of a sudden, cut to commercial.
Well, yeah, people aren't quite ready for that because now that's embracing this whole new narrative of,
But you're a man. How can you get pregnant? You can't get pregnant. You're a guy. You don't have a uterus.
Well, listen, we're almost at the point where we can just kind of, create an egg and, not unlike Alien, just stick it into somebody and hope it fucking grows. So
but I want to see the one where it bursts out of the chest.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Me personally, again, I have no issue with how somebody wants to identify sexually, but I think that we tread a very, very thin line when we start fucking with the natural order. If you look at, say, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, those types of things don't usually end up well for the general population. Okay. Again, it has nothing to do with belief or feeling. It just has to do with some practical elements. You know what I mean? That when we start fucking with things that we don't know really what we're doing, and we don't. Okay. We like to pretend we talk a really good talk and be like, well, but in this end of the spectrum, this is just way, way outside the scope. And we already know that when we start changing the natural orders of things, you look at it and what's happening with climatology. You look at it, what's happening with animal species or the air or the ocean or any number of analogies that, again, it tends to end up badly. You know what I mean? And that's not to say, like, I'm all for, a lot of women out there struggle because they can't conceive. So, I support the dynamic that, hey, you want to find an alternate way to do this. That's your right and choice. But there are consequences for fucking with the natural order.
True.
True. And it's tough because a lot of people, again, struggle with the narrative. They're taught to say, well, if you don't have a child, somehow you're less than. You know what I mean? I know that's something that Shia struggled with. And, I've talked about this very openly. She's been more of a mother to my son than his own fucking mother was. So I don't think it has anything to do per se with the actual birthing process. Some people are naturally loving, naturally supportive. They are healers, light workers, you know what I mean? You don't have to have a child necessarily.
Well, like adoptive people who adopt children, that doesn't make them any less a parent. That is a parent.
Well said.
If you choose to adopt a child and have any child from anywhere, and you choose to raise it as your own child, you're still a parent. You are still very much a parent, and kudos to you. And if you're probably even more of a parent because that's not your own flesh and blood, and you chose to love it as your own flesh and blood.
So before we close out the show, I want to again make the simple disclaimer. We're not saying that people shouldn't be able to identify. We're not saying that somebody is less than. We're just saying, hey, listen, we just need a couple little basic boundaries, especially when it comes to our children, and the obvious avoiding, as Nikki says, the rabbit holes. God knows there's too many of them in the fucking yard as it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. But you're either falling in the rabbit hole or you're stepping in somebody's pile of shit these days. So it's kind of like, choose your poison.
Well, what was that game again? Silent Hill. You fall into the rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden
you'll literally go to fucking hell.
Yeah, you're going to go see, what is it? Pyramid Man, whatever.
I forget. My son played that game. It just wasn't one of the ones that I actually got into. But listen, there are plenty of examples within pop culture. You know what I mean? Where, even in cartoons, you know what I mean? The evil lurking in the shadows, just waiting to rear its nefarious little head. Listen, I want to thank you again, my sister. We have hit the 10 o'clock mark. It never seems like we have enough time. So I'm going to have to say, you're going to have to come back out here and we'll get to those other subjects that you had mentioned. And I still think, and I said this offline and I'm going to say it publicly and stuff like that, you have a natural cadence. You know what I mean? You have a natural understanding. It's a good format for you. I think you should do your own show.
My boyfriend would love it right now. Yes. He says that to me. He wants me to do a TED Talk. And I'm like, but I don't know what I'm going to say.
Well, listen, at the risk of sounding like an asshole, you don't have any problem talking, girl. Okay. You really don't. Yeah. But that's one of the things we love. No, I'm going to be honest. It's one of the things I love about you. You're not afraid to say what you're thinking, what you're feeling. You don't pretend to be the all-knowing, all-seeing, eye in the sky. You're just like, hey, this is my experience. This is how I see it. Take it or leave it. But you're also open-minded and willing to look at it from different angles to say, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not right. That requires real strength and character. It's easy when you're right to be wrong. Like, hey, but I
don't mind being wrong. I like being wrong sometimes. I probably like that more than being right.
Better to be wrong for the right reasons, again, as they say.
Exactly. For me, it's learning. It's a time to learn. If you're willing to impart knowledge and do it in a very non-confrontational way, fine. I'm okay to be wrong.
But listen, also, it helps break stereotypes as well, too, because a lot of people, again, are polarized by everything that's going on around them. You put on this particular channel, they're screaming about this. You put on the other side, they're screaming about that. And then we have chaos around us. And, one can't help but wonder, just like, how about we deal with some shit that's actually relevant? And granted, everybody has their own take, Obviously, down in Florida, you're dealing with a little bit different dance, but it's still reflective of that ability to kind of, be tolerant and understanding of others around us.
Yes, absolutely. Ah, so alas.
Yes, your time has expired.
Oh, okay.
Please insert 25 cents for the next 30 seconds. Remember those days?
Yes, I do.
So, yes, thank you again, my sister. It's always a pleasure. We'll get you back out here again. Maybe we'll have you out on the Saturday show and we'll play a bunch of crazy music and stuff like that. But you're definitely somebody that's always around, within Shia circles and some of the Inner Demon Media circles. And definitely somebody to keep an eye out. I'm definitely looking forward to. Well, listen, I read the article that you did. Next time you come out, I want to talk about that more because, again, your writing definitely is starting to take form, and I think that's important. When we support each other, we all gain from it. That's my philosophy. Again, we don't have to agree on everything, but we can build each other up instead of dragging each other down. So I am going to, I think, which one am I going to close it out tonight? You know what? For my brother Jonathan, because I didn't open the show the same way, I am going to close the show with a track that he and I and Matt Brown and my son did called Time of the Phoenix. So again, until next time, try and remember, love each other as best you can, and in return, hopefully you'll get the love that you need in your life. You've been dancing with wolves. And I'll be back Saturday morning, 11 a.m. on Inner Demon Radio. Shia will be live tomorrow night for What the Fuck Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sid Ryder and Papa Olson are going to be out with their Talking with Heathens. Yeah, you've been hanging out with those shows. Those guys, they got some good stuff going. And then we have Sundays, Two Ravens and a Wolf, which is Sid Ryder, Munistera, and Lindsay doing, again, a little bit different, some of the pagan, more mystical elements, but again, still very cool show. That'll be Sundays around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There may be a little fluctuation because they've been bringing in people from like Ireland and all over the place, which again, I think is really cool. It gets to expose people to different elements, not only of culture, but of history, the things that they've been experienced to. So again, Time of the Phoenix, as written by Jonathan Porter, myself, and Matt Brown. And until next time.
Thank you.
If I could turn back time, then I wouldn't change any life. What go by, life goes by, the times are right to die. Days go by, years go by, life goes by, the times are right to die. Days go by, years go by.